This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in this episode's description. Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. I am here with Corbin, the Ioniq guy. Corbin, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Isaiah.
I'm glad you are here. You recently took delivery of a 2025 Ioniq 5 with native NACS J3400. You flew all the way to Colorado to pick up your new Ioniq 5, and you actually made a video with Jordan competing against the Tesla Model 3 on the Tesla Supercharging network, and we found out that, well, the Ioniq 5 charges better on Tesla's own network. Now, you drove across the country, right?
Yeah, I drove back to Boston from Fort Collins.
Well, yeah, before we get into that, you were looking like you wanted to say something there. What was that like, that charging experience against the Model 3?
So I just want to point out that the Model 3 is a more efficient car. So even though it did lose that race, in reality, it probably still could go further on what was delivered from that 10 to 80%. So I'll give it that.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I believe Jordan said at the end of that video that, yeah, the Model 3 ended up going further. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's where efficiency comes into place. Mm-hmm. Now, you guys, the curve of the Ioniq 5, now we don't have an official graph, but it immediately picked up to about 126, you say?
Yeah, it's a fairly slow ramp up to 126, so it doesn't just go straight up. It takes about a minute and a half to get there. But once it's there, it will just sit there until mid 60s. And then at that point, it will drop to about 100 or so. And then once you approach 80%, it'll drop down again a little bit.
Awesome. Okay. I observed that in the video as well. Yeah, as you guys got closer to a higher state of charge, kind of slowly tapered out, but still holding right above 120 for quite a bit of time. And then even after you started tapering off, kind of holding about that 100 level there is, I think, astonishing. Now, you driving from Colorado all the way back to Massachusetts, what was that like?
It was a lot to do by myself. It was the longest road trip I've ever done. And to do it 3 days back to back, it was a lot, but it was a really fun trip. First 2 days, weather was nice and clear, sunny. Third day, from 6:30 a.m. until 9:30 at night, it snowed all the way from Columbus, Ohio back to central Connecticut. And it was a rough drive.
Awesome. And I imagine, right, with all of the charging infrastructure between here and Colorado, seeing various chargers, Electrify America, of course, Tesla, you visited an Ionna station as well. Let's kind of talk about that. What was that like? What was the peak rate you saw there?
Yeah, so I actually went to 2 Ionna stations. So now I've been to 3 in 3 different states, which is pretty cool. Amazing. The first one was in Springfield, Ohio. I think that one was out of Sheetz. I got there pretty late at night and there was nobody else there. I was the only one. So I had pick of the litter. Right. And of course they have the dedicated NACS station. So I obviously was going to use that. It went pretty well. The interface there is easy to use. It walks you through getting a charging session started. The battery was nice and warm, so it shot up above 200 kilowatts. Awesome. It was really nice not having to fiddle with the CCS to NACS adapter, because I did experience a lot of trouble over the first couple of days on Electrify America. I don't think it was the adapter's fault, but it was just the combination of fiddling with the adapter and fiddling with the Electrify America app that just really kind of started to drive me crazy. So getting to use nice, reliable Ionna stations was very refreshing.
Yeah, the introduction of more CPOs with those Alpatronic HYC400s, seeing more of those is such a pleasant sight. as well as other EVSEs that are really taking over. Now, you use the Electrify America and some non-Tesla supercharging stations. Is there a specific reason why you chose not to really just stick it out with Tesla's network?
When I first kind of planned this trip, I kind of went back and forth in my head. Now that we have the NACS, do I just ride across the country utilizing Tesla? And ultimately, I said there were some other stations that I wanted to check out. I think 4 or 5 Pilot Flying J stations.
Okay.
The EVGO stations I went to, really liked those, especially with their auto charge feature. So yeah, it was kind of a toss up, but I ultimately just wanted to check out some other stations. And I totally had a botched moment where I was hoping to check out the Rivian Adventure Network because there's one station in Kansas, I believe, that is open to non-Rivian vehicles.
Right.
And I totally forgot where it was. I drove right past it. It was actually at my first Electrify America charging station, but it was kind of off in the distance, so I didn't see it. So I kept driving to the next Rivian Adventure Network station, and I get there and I go to plug in, and it's like, error. This isn't kosher. And luckily for me, there was an Electrify America station like a quarter mile away. Otherwise, I would have been screwed.
What happened at that Rivian Adventure Network station? Were those the new version 1.5s, the taller public stalls?
Yeah, I'm not totally familiar with the network, but I'd say they were like probably 6.5 feet tall or so.
Okay. Yeah,
you would know more about that than I would.
Right. Yeah, that would probably be the version 1s, which wouldn't make them public. But yeah, I can imagine it's like, what's going on here? Like adapters, this car has NACS, what's going on here?
Yeah, and I was super excited to check out the Rivian because I think it's rated for 250 kilowatts, right?
So it's rated up to 300, but
okay.
They split share power depending on the station. So some it will split 100 kilowatts each, and others it will split 150 each.
Okay.
That station's probably 150 each. But
I would imagine.
Yeah.
There was nobody there, so
right. You get
I probably would
have got the litter.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, using the adapter, was that difficult? Was that easy? I mean, what was that like?
I mean, as somebody who's never had to use an adapter at a charging station before, I know a lot of Tesla people will go to CCS stations. It was just like an extra kind of thing I had to get used to doing when I would get out of the car at a charging station. I must have forgot it in the car at least 4 or 5 times. And I go to grab the handle. I'm like, oh, I need the adapter. But it's just tough to kind of gauge what you should be doing with it. Do you plug it into the car first and then plug the connector from the station into it? Do you put it onto the cable first and then plug the whole assembly into the car? So I believe the Hyundai manual says to put the adapter onto the connector. And I had multiple issues doing it that way. But again, that might have just been Electrify America problems, which we all are just so used to these days. But yeah, I mean, I know Hyundai wanted to kind of be out front with this transition to NACS. And I think after Lucid, technically they got out before Hyundai Ioniq 5 did with the Gravity, but they wanted to be out in front, and it just feels still today like it's a little too early to have the NACS port. Like I could definitely see having a CCS port for at least another 2 or 3 years and give the charging operators time to install new connectors and cables. Right. So I think for a lot of people, it's kind of just an extra level of difficulty that they don't want to deal with. Obviously, I want to experience what it's like with the adapter, so I got to go out and get the new car with the NACS port. But yeah, it's just another thing to have to worry about.
I wonder. I'll say this, because the Tesla Supercharging Network isn't great with higher voltage vehicles, right? I guess the nominal voltage of the Ioniq 5, that's like 600 volts, right?
Fully charged, it's exactly 800.
Okay, 800 volts. So yeah, even even worse on Tesla's network, which doesn't do great with higher voltage vehicles, as we know, right? Caps at 500 volts. So it's great for those vehicles, but on 400 volts. And so for vehicles like the Gravity, which we did a whole interview with Lucid engineers and talking about how they were able to get around, right, better charging performance on Tesla's supercharging network that have a lower voltage.
How are they doing it? Are they doing a split pack?
So no, they're using honestly, I couldn't like regurgitate what they said and like explain it to you, but they're using some sort of rear motor inverter, yeah, which helps change the voltage. It's magic.
That's what the Ioniqs do as well. So awesome. It sounds like they're kind of took a page out of Hyundai's book there.
Right.
So, but what are they able to charge at on a Tesla Supercharger?
So 225 is the max.
Oh, wow.
Versus the 126 that you saw on the Ioniq 5. So
interesting.
Yeah, bigger jump there.
Good for them.
That's Lucid with the crazy engineering. But I agree. I think I could definitely understand why CCS could continue to work. Tesla is now going to be rolling out version 4 cabinets with the version 4 dispensers, which is going to make it a lot easier, specifically in your case, right, with NACS and a higher voltage vehicle. But as of right now, where V4 dispensers, we have 0 V4 cabinets, V4 dispensers only make up 14% of all superchargers across the globe. Really, it I imagine in your case, right, it's just weird. And CCS1 stations, the infrastructure from Electrify America and Ionna and EVGO ends up being a bit better in your case with the higher voltage.
Yeah, it's easier. I'm lucky enough to have a V4 Tesla Supercharger within 10 miles of where I live. So yesterday when that news kind of came out that Cybertruck was going to be able to charge it up to 325 kilowatts, I was like, I got to go out and test this. Maybe they increase the voltage output. But as I think Kyle mentioned this morning, he did a test last night and it's just cranking up the current to like 900 amps or something, which is insane.
Yeah. Crazy amperage. Yeah. 900 amps for the Cybertruck. And still with that split pack because it's using old hardware, these low voltage version 3 cabinets. But, as soon as we get the version 4 cabinets, it would be awesome to see how the Ioniq 5 performs.
Oh, it should be a monster.
Yeah. Now, are there any takeaways, any like tips or tricks for, I guess, owners who will be soon taking delivery of vehicles with native NACS? I mean, very soon, right?
I lost you, Isaiah.
Lost you there for a second. Okay. I'll start over. We have tons of vehicles that are coming to market with native NACS. Of course, we have Lucid. We have the lineup of the Kia Hyundai vehicles. Rivian, Mercedes, their BMW just showed a vehicle with native NACS. It's happening. What are your thoughts on picking up a native NACS vehicle versus something with CCS1?
I mean, right now, personally to me, the changes beyond just the NACS port that Hyundai's made to the 2025 kind of go beyond just the NACS port. So I personally would go get one with a NACS port again, but there's going to be a lot of good deals on these 2024s that still have the CCS ports. So if you're a deal hunter, I mean, you can probably snag one of these for a really good price. But for me, the improvements are just worth whatever little extra money it's going to cost you in the end.
Right. And Hyundai Kia vehicles will be getting the NACS adapters very soon. I mean, we've already seen some out there being delivered. In fact, I'll kind of get your opinion on this. So I guess Hyundai delivered an adapter and it has a giant label on it that says use only for Kia vehicles. Do you know why that is? I mean, of course, I can imagine warranty, but.
So yeah, I saw that Kia owners just yesterday started getting them in the mail after they were able to place the order the other day. And I saw that big giant sticker on the adapter. I mean, beggars can't be choosers. You're getting a free adapter.
Right.
If you want to go out and get a 500 amp adapter, you have that opportunity if you want to. I kind of echo Tom Malogany a little bit in the fact that people might get a new car and they want to get rid of it and they put it on eBay and it doesn't have that sticker on it anymore. And somebody buys it and uses it on a super low voltage car that's going to draw 400, 500 amps of current, and it could cause problems. So I really don't know why they wouldn't just make it a 500 amp adapter. Right. Obviously, they're making tens of thousands of these things. So even cutting the cost by $4 or $5 each is going to save them a ton of money. So it's usually, I mean, I've worked in engineering for many years. The penny pinchers are always going to get the last word over the engineers. So if the engineer says, I want 500 amps, they're going to say, well, we have to meet this price point and you're not going to do it with those components. So it is unfortunate, but that's just the reality.
And your Ioniq 6, we'll see Hyundai vehicles soon getting adapters as well. Do you have any information or update of when Ioniq 6 vehicles will be getting native NACS as well as an adapter?
So adapters are still on track for Q1. I just talked to Hyundai the other day. They wanted me to really stress that they are kind of parting ways with Kia because they are two separate companies. So you probably saw a lot of ads online for January 15th was going to be the day that Kia and Hyundai both got access. And then that day came and went. So it was a lot of this advertising that got kind of people up in a frenzy. So Hyundai is still Q1. So we've got another 2 months before that. So a few more weeks here. And then the 2026 Ioniq 6 coming out later this year is going to be a mid-cycle refresh, and it should be getting the native NACS port later this year.
Nice. Awesome. And will you be switching out your Ioniq 6 as well?
I have that lease until next April, so potentially next year.
Are you looking forward to any changes in the Ioniq 6? I've always been curious about how it performs. We made a video early this year talking about EV sales, and the Ioniq 6 didn't perform as well as I thought it originally had or would. Even the BMW i4 was outselling the Ioniq 6, which I was like, kind of like, how? I mean, that's nuts. The i4, it's a EV. Are there any like changes that you're hoping you see on the Ioniq 6? This is kind of deviating way from native NACS, but it's Ioniq question.
Sure. I love the Ioniq 6. I mean, it's, if you want to go as far as possible on a kilowatt hour of energy, I mean, it's the car to do it in. I mean, you guys remember from the I-90 surge, we kicked the Mercedes butt. But yeah, it's a good car. I would say my biggest hope for it is that they can improve some of the interior material quality for the lower end trims. Like in my SE standard, not SE, in my SE big battery, rear wheel drive, it's just a lot of hard plastic. There's not a lot of soft touch points in there. It just, I understand it's on the cheaper end of their lineup. It's, I think, starts at 42,000. It doesn't feel like a $42,000 car. I mean, back when I had a gas car, a Mazda CX-5, that car was like $27,000, and it was just loaded with nice soft touch materials, and it looked really premium. So I really do hope they can take the Ioniq 6 up a notch in that regard. I like the styling. So I know the styling is kind of, you love it or you hate it. I happen to like it. I guess I'm a little biased there, but based on some of the leaks, it looks like they're going to possibly make it look more like the new Sonata with the light bar across the front. So I think they're going to try and tone down some of the kind of crazy design that they've implemented into it. I hope it can spur more sales because, like you mentioned, it is selling quite poorly. I mean, it's at least 4-1 to the Ioniq 5.
I like the new Sonatas. Hyundai, Kia have done amazing at designing like really futuristic, but just out of the box vehicle designs. And so the Ioniq 6, out of the box, but is a little like interesting looking. And I think the Sonata is going for a more Sonata look would help it a lot. I do want to kind of end out this video, kind of ending out with NACS again. So the charge port location. So we're seeing on the EV6, the charge port is on the correct, I use air quotes all the time for this, but the correct side for the EV6, but the Ioniq 5, it's on the opposite side. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to put it in air quotes because depending on who you ask, they're going to say that the passenger side is the correct side for off-street parking and charging. I polled my audience about this, and it was almost 50-50 in terms of what side people preferred. For the EV6, it was a pretty easy change for them to make because it was built into a plastic housing in the rear fascia, versus the Ioniq 5, it's part of the body stamping. So they would have to get all new tooling for the sheet metal pressing in order to do that. Now, I don't know why they couldn't do that since it's coming out of a brand new factory. So they could have catered it to the US market, I suppose, but maybe in their eyes, they just see version 4 superchargers as kind of solving that problem as they start coming out more. I don't know which side I personally prefer. I've gotten used to it being on the passenger side, but I mean, in terms of just getting out and plugging in real quick, obviously the driver's side is very nice. All the Tesla Superchargers I stopped at, this was like the first time I've really ever gone to Superchargers in any form, and just seeing people get out of their car, literally 5 seconds to plug in, and then they're back in their nice warm car.
Yeah. First having to going around. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I do really like the NACS connector. It is a far superior connector. The cables are so much lighter, smaller. It goes in so easily, especially with the Ioniq 5. On the DC charging pins, it has this fiddly little flap that I don't have fingernails because I keep them short, because if I didn't, I would chew them to death. But I don't have any fingernails, and it's almost impossible for me to pry it off. And when it's cold out, it's even worse.
Yeah, the DC pin, all I know is a lot of Ioniq 5 owners like just cut it off.
I should have just cut it off a long time ago. I don't know why I didn't.
That's a good point there. Yeah, the DC pin cover, having to consistently pull that off versus NACS. Yeah, it's just one and done.
Yeah, and like the Ioniq 6, the charging port is recessed quite deep. So on the DC pins, they actually have a loop that you can put your finger through to pull it out. So it's significantly easier, but not having any of that is definitely preferable.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, yeah, I think that really concludes this episode. Thank you so much for joining me, Corbin. I mean, especially learning about why the Ioniq 5 port is on the opposite side versus the EV6. I thought it was just kind of like Kia and Hyundai just kind of separating themselves, and Kia just being kind of innovative and front forward. I'm like, no, we're going to change it. And Hyundai's like, we're rebellious. We're going to put it where we want to put it. So I'm glad you clarified that.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, Corbin's information, the Ioniq guy, will be linked down in the description. You have a pretty long video going over your entire road trip. And I'm like halfway through that. So
hope you're enjoying it.
Yes. Yeah, you make amazing content. It really fits the Out of Spec style. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. And this is the Out of Spec podcast, and we will see you guys in the next episode.